Welcome to All About Art. My name is Alexandra, and I'm an art historian, curator, and writer. Within this podcast, topics relating to art history, cultural policy, the art sector, as well as a large range of other art-related topics will be covered. Conducting critical discussions, having entertaining exchanges, or just enjoying some relaxing chats, All About Art is where you'll find it all. Join me in exploring and developing cultural discourse. Welcome to the first Hot Take Art Break episode. When All About Art started, I conducted interviews, but also published solo episodes where I talked about all sorts of art world related things. When I graduated from university and went into working full-time, that sort of tapered off, and the podcast leaned into the interview format more and more. But now it's time for a revamp. And I'll be doing these hot take art breaks, where I'll speak about art world things and give my opinion on them. You know, in case anyone wants to hear my 2 cents. And I will also be bringing in other things, like book and exhibition reviews. It not only adds more diversity for you as the listener of the podcast, who I really appreciate, but it also makes it really fun and educational for me as the producer of it all. I learn each time I make an episode, so it'll be great to do more of it. Anyway, let's not waste any more time, and let's get into it. For this episode, I'm going to talk about a recently published article in Hyperallergic. It came out on August 14th and is written by Damian Davis, an artist and educator based in the US. I will cover what Damian writes in the article, as well as the reactions of others in the art world that I've seen on social media. Throughout, of course, I will give my own take on it. Let's dive in. The article starts off with one line, quote, "August is when the capitalist parts of the art world go to sleep," which definitely made me chuckle. It's so true. In London and New York, and probably in many other parts of the world, the commercial art galleries basically all shut down or are open by appointment only, with a summer hang comprised of inventory or stock that they already had, as opposed to like consigning artworks from the secondary market or working directly with an artist to put together an exhibition. Davis goes on to mention the deep tremors in the art fair economy due to the art show, a flagship art fair by the Art Dealers Association of America in New York, being, quote, strategically paused this year, although it was originally scheduled to open with a benefit preview at the end of October. A bit more background on this is that the art show began in 1988 and has the aforementioned gala preview night, which benefits the Henry Street Settlement, which is an organization that opens doors of opportunity for Lower East Side residents and other New Yorkers through social service, arts, and healthcare programs. In the last 30 years, according to an ArtNet News article, the benefit raised over $38 million for the nonprofit. The reason why it's called a strategic pause and not a full-on cancellation or a closure of the fair is because the board said that the fair would return next year with a, quote, renewed vision. This all goes to underline Davis's point of how the art world is under a lot of strain right now. And even though galleries are slowing down in the summer months and fairs are taking strategic pauses, artists keep creating. He goes on to make a strong statement, saying, quote, "Artists, the ones at the center of this whole machine, don't get to disappear. There's no out-of-office reply for your studio practice. The work continues even when the system that profits from it has taken a vacation." At this point, I want to interject briefly and say that although galleries may be closed to visitors or open by appointment only, unless you live in France where basically everyone takes their vacation during August, there is still staff manning the galleries and preparing for the very busy season ahead in the fall, which in London is the biggest and busiest time of the year. In the galleries that I've worked in, summaries of sales for artists are being put together, and there's a steady communication with the artist liaisons about upcoming opportunities, both inside and outside of the gallery. But let's read on before I dive too deep on this too early on before we get through the whole article. So, back to the Hyperallergic essay. Davis moves on to the main meat of the article, namely the 50-50 split between artists and galleries. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, typically, when an artist works with a gallery, 50% of the sale of a work goes directly to the artist, and the other 50% goes to the gallery. And this is treated as an industry standard. And, as Davis rightly states, it's seemingly regardless of the gallery's size, resources, or the labor that they contribute. I always defend the 50-50 split because I worked in a gallery where they would cover the staffing, production costs, depending on the situation, shipping, insurance, writing, and finding opportunities, as well as cultivating clients on the business getting side of things. All the artists needed to do was concentrate on their practice. And that's exactly what Davis touches on as well, ensuring that he states that not all galleries are created equal. Davis goes on to cover 2 case studies. One of art dealer Leo Castelli as basically the founding father of the 50-50 split. It's acknowledged in the article that Castelli defined this ideal gallery as acting as a patron, a partner, and a portal to various audiences. He was the one that led the way for that. Davis goes on to state that his model was built on economic, cultural, and geopolitical privilege in New York City at a certain time when this split was a viable option to build a business on, while also leveraging himself being Castelli, as a certain tastemaker in a way. This is the one case study that Davis describes as being built on elite access. The second case study is of Jam, or just above Midtown. It was founded in 1974 by Linda Good Bryant, and she shifted it from a for-profit to a non-profit in 1976. So after just 2 years of running it as a for-profit gallery, she was championing artists who weren't a part of the commercial art world, i.e. those who were not white male artists. It was built on community and experimentation, and the move to a non-profit, in Davis's argument, allowed for more independence through grants and philanthropy instead of private sales and market value, shifting away from any sort of idea of a 50-50 split as the business model. This model is described by Davis as being built on radical community. So this is where we have the 2 dichotomies within the case study, being built on elite access, Leo Castelli, and being built on a radical community just above Midtown. That's sort of the TLDR of it, but I urge you to read the article to get more context on these case studies as well. And I've linked the article in the show notes so that you can have a read. Anyway, while comparing these 2 examples, Davis states that Jam reminded us, the us being the art world that holds the Castelli 50-50 model as the status quo, that there are other ways to structure relationships between artists and galleries. This is where it gets juicy, and in my opinion, Davis gives such invaluable practical advice to artists on how to assess if a 50-50 split is justified within a gallery. Now, this is also a good thing if you are an aspiring gallerist or you want to work with galleries or collect from them in order to understand what kind of galleries you're doing business with. So it's not just useful for artists. I've heard too many horror stories, especially recently with a lot of emerging and mid-tier galleries shutting their doors and owing artists tons of money. And I think if we all ask ourselves the questions Davis outlines, we could approach things in a way more informed way. So back to what I said earlier about the galleries that I've worked for, Davis says the same, namely that some galleries absolutely earn their cut. The galleries that don't are the ones that take a very hands-off approach and rely on the artist to not only produce their work, but also drive sales or business and press leads, which, and I echo Davis, is fucking ridiculous. It can be a catch-22 though, the chicken and the egg, which is something that I feel with the podcast as well. Hey, if I had more funding behind it, I could up the production and film it with video and hire an assistant and get so much more content out there. But will I be able to get a sponsor or funding if I don't already do all those things? Which one comes first? I guess with a gallery, depending on the size and existing infrastructure and the price they sell the works at, they may not have the resources, just in terms of time and staff, to be able to do what a big gallery does. But they are putting in the efforts into building relationships with you as an artist or with young collectors as clients. Sometimes there's a level of growing with your gallery. Davis makes a cool suggestion, saying that the point isn't to punish galleries for not having the resources, but he suggests we rethink agreements that reflect it by having sliding scale commissions or contracts that revisit terms after a certain amount of time. I think it's really good because Davis is actually raising an issue within the art world and he's providing actual solutions to the problem. So really huge kudos to that because this is a hard topic to tackle. Davis goes on to list questions that you can ask yourself as a general framework to see if a 50-50 split is really justified. This might be a good time to get out your notepad and pen. The list begins with who pays for production, packaging, and shipping. Then, is the gallery actively introducing your work to new collectors, curators, and press? Or are they leaning on your existing network? The third question is, do they provide clear, regular communication about sales, pricing, and collector relationships? Because yes, it is normal to be notified of when something is sold, how much it's sold for, who it's sold to, and to get a breakdown of the costs that the artist can invoice the gallery for. That is good practice. There are two more that David lists. Is the gallery helping contextualize your work with press releases, PDFs, and conversations with institutions? And also, in my opinion, it's important that they check back with you about that communication. And finally, when your work sells, did they do that? Or had you put it in motion before they got involved? He ends the article by reiterating his stance of rethinking commission structures between artists and art businesses. He states that artists are the center of this ecosystem, yet the market thrives on convincing them that they're interchangeable, as if the work could exist without the labor and vision that brought it into being. I really want to state here that in good galleries, my God, no artist should ever feel that way. They should feel supported, appreciated, and championed. And that just isn't the reality for a lot of galleries. Davis is amongst the people calling them out on it. His final sentence really hit home, saying, quote, "August may be quiet, but that silence is an opening. Let's use it to talk, to compare notes, to ask for more. Let's make sure the math is mathing for everyone so that when we do go 50-50, it's because we're showing up 100-100. So, I finish reading the article and I scroll down to the comments while also opening another tab to peep the comments under the Instagram post about the article on Davis's profile. Some people were siding with galleries, with someone stating that 50-50 doesn't even cover gallery bills, which is why galleries keep dropping like flies. And when a gallery really earns that commission, covering taxes, overhead costs like rent and electricity, shipping, digital upkeep like website and socials, not to mention fair participation fees and staffing, the profit margins are little to none. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the gist. Another person made an argument for circumventing galleries altogether, turning studios into show spaces and getting to collectors directly, which I disagree with because isn't the whole point that artists don't have to do these things? Like, sure, go ahead and try and find collectors, but that means you need to be out of the studio and in places where these collectors are. You need to be taking them to dinners like a salesperson would do, and you need to be cultivating long-term relationships with them. That's just the reality of it. You would become a salesperson yourself, which I believe is something many artists don't actually want to do. If you do, though, that's great for you, and you should then maybe use that willpower and skill to see if you can circumvent the galleries if you so wish. Then, within the comments, I saw some gallerists commenting that they pay out of their own pocket to keep their businesses afloat, which I am very familiar with, I must admit, and that the real fight is to make it clear to the public that art is important, and collecting art can be extremely gratifying and doesn't have to break the bank, especially when buying from these younger galleries supporting emerging artists. One person said, quote, "If you can't afford being an artist, do something else," which I think has since been deleted, but holy shit did that make my blood boil. Excuse me, but don't you realize this is already an extremely elitist industry? Don't you understand how much grit goes into trying to make it in the art world because we genuinely believe in the power art has within society? What an ignorant comment. But hey, there's no use for me defending it on here because I honestly think that I'm preaching to the choir to everyone listening in. Someone in the comments also mentioned submission fees. Submissions for what? To show at a gallery? Huh? I get it if it's like a publication or an award. I mean, I pay small submission fees for the podcast all the time, and I haven't won an award yet, but I've never heard of a submission fee for a gallery. Like, am I missing something? I'm apparently dealing with really different galleries because I'm super entrenched in the art world and I've worked in galleries, and that's just not really something I've heard of. Artists, but also other cultural practitioners like curators and writers, shouldn't have to pay the passion tax of working in this sector. And we don't need to be grateful for visibility alone. We deserve equitable standards. I'm not an artist myself, but I can definitely relate to the sentiment of wanting to be valued for the work that I do. And when I say valued, I mean properly financially compensated. It's an odd line to walk between getting asked for advice and then getting pulled into conversations where I basically give an accidental hour of free consulting, not really knowing how to pull the handbrake on the conversation. I know it's not necessarily the same thing, but the point that I'm making here is that it's a wider issue of value within the cultural sector. To sum up, I think that this is a good point to end the episode on this idea and this issue of value. Firstly, the value that we put on each other as industry professionals and on our own work, and then having open, transparent conversations about it from both sides. Secondly, it's the value society puts on our industry, from the general public consuming art, either via public institutions or by buying it, all the way to the government decreasing funding throughout the last decade. This is something that we must continuously work towards. It's taxing, but it's needed. And that is it for today on All About Art. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating or a review, as it helps more people discover the show. Also, feel free to share with your friends, or if you share on social media, tag me and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening.